Yo, what is going on YouTube? It's your boy Dan, aka aDrive. But guys, our draft breakdown for the WBE World Battle Entertainment, the Minnesota Vikavolts are drafting our first team for Pokemon Sword and Shield. If you're just tuning into this video and you have no idea what Draft League is, I'll break it down very briefly for you. Draft League Pokemon is a competitive Pokemon league that I run called the WBE, where each coach, 16 different coaches from across the YouTube and Twitch space, will draft one Pokemon in each round in a snake format to compile a team of 10 different Pokemon with 16 various coaches. It's much like football, American football, where we battle each once per week against a different coach, and we plan out our team to try to counter team the other person's team. So let's say the first week of the season I battle Joey or Pokeaim. I know what 10 Pokemon he has, he knows what 10 Pokemon I have, and we build a team of 6 Pokemon to try to battle against each other to throw down in one battle. There's going to be 8 weeks of the season, and I'm going to showcase the team that I have for this season right here in this video. If you didn't see the entire draft stream, it should be uploaded to my YouTube channel, whether it be very soon before this or shortly thereafter, but it should be uploaded to my YouTube channel, and it was streamed on my Twitch stream. So yeah, let me talk about the team here, what we picked, and so on and so forth. Very briefly, each team was going to pick one Gigantamax Pokemon, one S-tier Pokemon, an A-tier Pokemon, 3 B-tier Pokemon, and 4 C-tier Pokemon. The Pokemon were tiered based on our own opinions in the council. Myself and 4 other coaches rated each Pokemon, and the basic rules in this league are that your only Pokemon that can Dynamax is your Gigantamax Pokemon. Everything else cannot max, so the only thing that can max is your Gigantamax pick. Everything else cannot max at any point in battles. The battles will be 6v6, and we've found some workarounds to get around the timer issues, so hopefully we'll be able to implement those and just have regular 6v6 Draft League battles as we always have. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Hit that like button down below, subscribe if you guys are new, and hopefully this video will give you some insight as to why I picked the Pokemon I picked, and I hope you guys are excited for Draft League battles. Our first week is actually next week. It'll be up on Saturdays, I believe, and we are taking on the Milwaukee Sawsbucks and Coach Magnitude, who is the creator of Draft League about 6 years ago. So very exciting. So let's talk about it. First round pick, went into things. I had like the 13th pick overall, so it's not like I had the greatest spot, but I was 13 out of 16, so I tried to focus on drafting Pokemon that really had cohesive units together. And when the draft was taking place, I really fell in love with Hatterene. Hatterene was one of the first competitive shinies that I got in this game. It's a very, very good Trick Room Pokemon, and much like Reuniclus, it can set Trick Room mid to late game and sweep with its own Trick Room, being so powerful. It's got really good physical attack, really great special attack, very slow with Magic Bounce, which can deter hazards, but it's so offensive, man. And I think people can really sleep on how offensive this thing is. It's got really, really good special attack, like I had mentioned, Dazzling Gleam and Psychic. It gets Power Whip for grass and water types. There's a lot of cool coverage options there, and again, Calm Mind is really viable, but also just Trick Room offensive can be really, really good with Hatterene. It's a Fairy and Psychic type Pokemon, and one of the better fairies in the game, and it was in the S tier. So I was very happy to get this. Now, in my second pick, again, I was the 13th pick, which means I was like the 3rd pick in the second round, essentially. I decided to go with Duraludon. Very stoked to get Duraludon. To me, Duraludon was one of the better Pokemon in the A tier and one of the better Pokemon in general, having a Dragon and Steel typing, only being weak to 2 types, Ground and Fighting, Hatterene being resistant to those fighting type attacks 4x, and Hatterene's weaknesses being Steel and Poison, I guess Steel, Poison, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, Ghost, some of those being resisted or immune for Duraludon. So you can see how the two work really well together, forming what's called a Dragon Fairy Steel core, but we did that in actually 2 picks, which is awesome. I felt like Duraludon being Steel and Dragon was one of the best Pokemon in the format. It is so good, very specially offensive, and Stalwart is a cool ability. You can also run, which ignores opponents' abilities. You can also run Light Metal or Heavy Metal if you're worried about like Low Kick or whatever, or want to run Heavy Slam. There's some cool options there, but primarily this thing is going to be used as like a Choice Specs or a Life Orb monster, man. It is going to decimate some things with some really, really powerful offensive attacks. It can also Stealth Rock too, so something to note is there are some utility options for Duraludon. It can be defensive and bulky and uses a defensive pivot to deal with some of the more offensive Pokemon, especially on the physical side. This thing also really benefits from an Assault Vest, so that's definitely another option there. But overall, I was very happy with my first 2 picks in Hatterene and Duraludon. I was very excited that I was able to get both of those Pokemon together, especially with such a bad draft spot. So anyway, it was quite a while for my next pick. I had to wait another, I don't know, 25 picks or so, but I was able to snag Gigantamax Flapple. Now, Flapple, another dragon type, doesn't really share any weaknesses with Duraludon, right? It's got this big ice weakness, but other than that, it doesn't have the fighting weakness and it doesn't have the ground weakness. And if anything, it actually has a ground resistance. Now, you might be like, why Flapple, aDrive? That doesn't really seem like that good of a Gigantamax pick. But one thing you gotta realize is Flapple essentially comes with a built-in choice band for its Hustle set. Hustle is an ability that boosts your attack by 50% if you use physical attacks, but it lowers your accuracy by 80%, or by 20% rather. So your accuracy is 80% of whatever the move you have. So because Flapple can miss a lot of attacks, it doesn't have to worry about that when it's a Gigantamax. So Flapple is so good because you can simply click Dragon Dance, set up, get an attack boost and a speed boost, and then Gigantamax and deal massive damage with max overgrowth, or it's actually its special max move, which actually reduces, I believe, the opponent's evasiveness, which makes Hustle even better on the following turns once the Gigantamax ends. It's got a signature move in Grab Apple, which allows you to hit the opponent and lower their physical defense stat, if I'm not mistaken, every time you hit them with the Grab Apple. So while Flapple might be a little bit slept on, I actually think it could be one of the best Gigantamax Pokemon in Draft League, because if it can set up that Dragon Dance, it can deal some massive damage. And it doesn't even have to do that. You can actually run Choice Scarf on this thing to just U-turn out and deal big damage with the Choice Scarf. And then if you want to remove that Choice Scarf in Gigantamax, you can do that. You can run all sorts of cool things. You can run a Berry on it, so that way if they go for like an ice move, you know, it's not a big deal. You can have the Ripen set as well, where you can double your berries. So you can run like Substitute with Citrus Berry or something. Like you could do all sorts of cool stuff with Flapple. Primarily Hustle is gonna be what I use the most, I think. But overall, I think it could be really, really cool to have this Pokemon on my team. I think it's got 3 great abilities. It's got a great typing. There's no hidden power anymore, again, so you don't have to worry about that. I did double down on some weaknesses with Hatterene, poison weakness, but overall, not a huge deal. We can easily kind of fix those as we move forward. I think that Flapple can be a really, really powerful offensive threat as a Gigantamax Pokemon. The next pick I decided to grab was Inteleon. When I looked at the draft pool, I thought about Pokemon that were fast, and our team right now, we have 70, 29, 85, and I wanted to get something really, really fast, and Inteleon is one of the fastest Pokemon in the format with base 121 speed. This thing is blistering fast, and it's got an incredible special attack stat with great ice coverage, dark coverage, ghost coverage, and water coverage, but do not sleep on its physical attack stat as well. It can run Swords Dance, and it's got moves like Fell Stinger and U-Turn to pivot around and boost its attack stat and do a lot of damage. So there's a ton of potential with Inteleon, but the primary reason for me drafting Inteleon was its massive speed stat. I really felt like having that speed was going to force my opponents to run Choice Scarves. It was going to force my opponent to prepare for this massive threat. And again, I think that Inteleon really helps me form this Fire, Water, Grass core that I'm creating with Flapple and Inteleon. It gives me an ice resistance, what I was previously worried about, and it gives me a really offensive cleaner and pivot Pokemon that again can U-turn and hit very hard from the special side, but also the physical side as well. Don't forget, it gets Aqua Jet and Ice Shard. Very cool stuff. The next Pokemon I decided to pick was Chandelure. Very stoked to use Chandelure. I feel like this is one of the most busted Pokemon, man. Every season I've played, Chandelure always is so good because it is a ghost type, it is a fire type. It's got some really good immunities, or abilities rather, in Infiltrator and Flash Fire, giving it an immunity. I love the fact that it has that nice pairing with Duraludon to take on those fighting type moves. It can deal with those steel type moves very well. It can deal with those ice type moves very well for Flapple. It sits at a pretty good speed tier at base 80, very good Choice Scarf user, but it can also utilize Trick Room as well, and that's something that this team has some really cool options with. There's definitely some great Trick Room options with this team, and Chandelure has a massive 145 special attack stat, which is going to be very difficult to take down. In fact, the best thing to do against Chandelure is to have a normal type Pokemon, and there's not that many good normal types, and even those get kind of busted by Flamethrower or Fire Blast. In fact, 2 of the best normal types actually have Fluffy, and they don't want to deal with that. So Chandelure, very powerful. Again, a really good option to run Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, Trick Room, just offensive in general. It can do a lot of things, and I'm really excited to have Chandelure on the team. The next Pokemon is going to be Rhydon in C tier. Rhydon to me was one of the more value picks in C tier, being a very bulky ground and rock type Pokemon that sports some really good immunities. For those who don't know, Rhydon in some ways can actually be better than Rhyperior. It has a 130 base attack stat. That is incredible. In fact, that's actually the highest attack stat on the team at this point in time. And that 130 base attack stat should not be slept on. It has the ability to set up with Swords Dance and Rock Polish, but also serve as a great stealth rock user for the team, setting up those hazards and removing the pressure off the Duraludon to do that and allow that to be more offensive. Don't forget about the Trick Room option on the team and the fact that there's no more Hidden Power. So Hidden Power Grass and Hidden Power Water do not exist for Rhydon. Now, I mentioned having a really powerful ground type Pokemon is very good here. It gives me an opportunity to hit really, really hard. It does share some weaknesses with Duraludon, which is something to keep in mind, but I have enough immunities and resistances to kind of cover that. So powerful ground types might be a bit annoying at this point, and powerful fighting types could also be annoying, but you'll see that I try to patch those up as we move forward here. The next Pokemon is going to be Vanilluxe. Now, to me, Vanilluxe, I think, was mistiered. I mentioned that I was one of the 5 people in the council that tiered every single Pokemon, and we legitimately went Pokemon by Pokemon and tiered them, and then re-tiered them and went through things, and Vanilluxe was left in C tier, and it probably should have been B tier, maybe A tier, but probably B tier. But either way, I'll take the value pick here. It was still sitting here in this round, and I couldn't pass up on it. For those who don't know, Vanilluxe has the ability to set its own hail and Aurora Veil in one click. Alolan Ninetales is one of my most effective and favorite Draft League Pokemon ever, and Vanilluxe does a lot of similar things, but it's actually stronger, not quite as fast, but it does get Autotomized. And there's a lot of teams that are weak to the combination of Blizzard plus Freeze Dry. That is very difficult to deal with. I also mentioned Flapple using Dragon Dance and setting up, or Hatterene using Calm Mind and setting up, or even Inteleon or Chandelure setting up as well, and Aurora Veil is the best tool to do that by setting up double screens, Reflect and Light Screen, automatically with the weather. Very, very cool Pokemon. Very good Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, Focus Sash, Light Clay, all sorts of stuff, man. Life Orb, Never Melt Ice, whatever you want to do, Vanilluxe can do some serious things. I think this was a massive steal in C tier. The next pick I got is Pincurchin in B tier. I have a little bit of a ground weakness, man, and that definitely scares me a wee bit, but Pincurchin, very, very cool. Pincurchin has the Electric Surge ability, which allows me to set up the electric terrain. I felt like having terrain on my team was invaluable because Electric Seed is so good. I can tech Electric Seed on one of my Pokemon, like a Flapple, or like a Duraludon, or like a Chandelure or something, and allow myself to set up a little bit easier. So Pincurchin has that option, but for those who don't know, Pincurchin in single battles is incredible. It's got Toxic Spikes, it's got Spikes, it's got Memento, which I love, as does Chandelure. It also hits pretty hard from both the physical or the special side, and it's great in Trick Room because of its incredibly slow speed. Do not sleep on the Cursed Pincurchin set. You can run max HP, max special defense with Kurtz, and you can even run your own Electric Seed and boost your defenses, and it has Recover. So with the lack of Toxic in the metagame, it could be incredibly difficult to knock out Pincurchin. I thought this was such a steal, and don't forget it has Lightning Rod as well, which is really cool. Not super useful in the concept of the team, but if there's really tough electric types that I have a hard time dealing with, I can basically give myself an immunity to them as opposed to making them stronger with our electric terrain. The next Pokemon I grabbed was Hitmonchan. I felt like having a fighting type on the team, especially one that had some priority, was pretty viable, so Hitmonchan is going to give me just that. It gives me a Mach Punch Pokemon with Iron Fist. It also has Bullet Punch if I'm not mistaken, but most importantly, it has Rapid Spin. It has a way to remove those hazards, so that way my opponent cannot simply hazard stack me and beat me to the ground with hazards. It has Rapid Spin, which boosts his speed, and that's actually really cool because it's mediocre speed at I think 76 or so. Actually gets pretty decent when you throw a Rapid Spin on it, and it's a great user of Assault Vest. So super cool Pokemon. Glad I got Hitmonchan. Rapid Spin only makes it better in this game, and I should be able to put in some work with this bad boy. And last but not least, I needed the ground resist. Like I said, I felt like I had a bit of a ground weakness on this team, and I'm gonna pick Dottler. And you're gonna be like, aDrive, you really just picked Dottler? Why Dottler? Let me tell you about Dottler, guys. This pick, when I picked this, the WBE chat went nuts, and everyone was like, wait a minute, is that real life? You picked Dottler? And I'm like, yes, look at its moves. And people didn't know how good this thing was. Dottler gets Sticky Webs, it gets Screens, it gets Trick Room. But the big thing that it gets Iron Defense, Calm Mind, and Stored Power. It can boost both its physical defense, its special defense, and its special attack, and use Stored Power all in one set. Incredible. And it gets Recover. Did I mention it gets Recover? This thing is incredibly bulky with the Eviolite and very difficult to take down. I think it's going to be a super fun Pokemon to use, and it gives me Sticky Web support on a team that otherwise is average speed. So we've got a lot of potential there. Now, I mentioned there are some flaws with this team. It's definitely not perfect. I noticed the big ground weakness. with Duraludon, Chandelure, Pincurchin, and Rhydon in a way, but I think I can work around that by having things like Flapple to resist and so on and so forth. There's always the option of air balloons, and I think offensively I deal with ground types relatively well. Flapple can deal a lot of damage, Inteleon can deal a lot of damage, so we're gonna have to work around that big weakness, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with the team. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to use. There was a limited draft pool, so that made it a little bit more challenging, but overall, very excited to jump into the WBE. I hope you guys are excited for the battles. I'll be posting them every single weekend, team builders as well, most likely, and that's gonna be that, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hit that like button down below, subscribe if you guys are new, and get ready for the WBE. Peace.